Hi, this is Sunil Bhartiya, and we are here at KubeCon and Cloud Native Con in Barcelona, Spain. And today we have with us Steve George, you are CEO of Weaveworks. So first of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Thomas.
It's the first day, it's just starting, but
Yeah.
have you gone out, met people, seen the keynote? What has been the experience so far?
So I didn't see the keynote this morning, we were too busy, but the general energy in the conference is fantastic. So continuing the growth of the KubeCon conferences. So it feels like a lot of energy in the room, both people who have got a lot of expertise in Kubernetes, but also a lot of people who are new to Kubernetes, just exploring, trying it out, discovering the new technologies. And then a lot of new vendors here as well. So, in general, cloud native landscape continues to develop with each conference that we go to. So, it's still a really exciting phase.
From Weaveworks' perspective, when you talk about it's evolving, it's growing, what kind of trends you're seeing or new customer you're seeing that excites you?
Right. Yeah, and I think in general, the way that Kubernetes is developing is it's developing as an application platform for a wide variety of different applications and users. So, a few years ago, you were looking at very in-depth users, and increasingly we see people who want to use a general application platform, but they're not necessarily Kubernetes experts, and they don't want to be Kubernetes experts. So whether you're deploying stateful or stateless applications now, you should be able to use the whole of the cloud native infrastructure to have a general company-wide, department-wide ability to deploy and run your applications. And the other thing that's changing, I think, now is that people are on-premise as well as in a variety of cloud infrastructure. So that whole multi-cloud story is really developing.
And as you also mentioned, new players are coming in.
Yeah.
Players, I mean users.
Yeah.
So what new challenges, because new players means new workloads.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So before we talk, either you can start with what kind of workloads interest you, or you can talk about what kind of challenges that those new workloads bring in that interest you.
Right. Well, so I think, both of those aspects are happening right now. In general, something that Weaveworks is focused on is the workflows and the way of operating Kubernetes in production. So the thing that we focus on is the fact that you need to deploy infrastructure, multiple numbers of clusters, multiple numbers of applications, and you have a variety of different teams working on that. So, not all of those people are going to be Kubernetes experts. So we have something called GitOps, which is all about configuration management, both of Kubernetes and the infrastructure and the applications, and using that to deploy, monitor, and manage all of those applications and the infrastructure in production. So that perspective is in the ability to get from development through to pre-production and production. But then the other aspect of things that's changing is people are deploying, as you said, a variety of different applications, and those applications bring with them more important requirements and constraints. So we have a large number of enterprises now that are starting to deploy quite serious applications in production. And I think the area that's got the most attention there is service meshes. And because we're seeing users use service meshes, in Weaveworks, we did a lot of work in CNI. We became well known for WeaveNet, which was one of the very first CNI networking products. And now with service meshes, we're seeing that continue. The ability to deploy applications with a minimum of downtime, high levels of security, and high levels of observability. And so generally the service mesh area seems to be one where there's lots of new technology, lots of new vendors at this KubeCon.
Right. I don't want to go too much into technology, but can you explain what exactly is GitOps?
Yeah, okay. So with GitOps, ultimately what we're talking about is configuration management for Kubernetes. And we've seen configuration management in many other areas of technology before. The fundamental tenet is the fact that with configuration management, we know who deployed or who configured what, at what point in time, and how it was done. And the reason that's important is that as you move faster, at some point there'll be a problem in that configuration or that setup. And if you have that stored in your configuration management system, then you can go back to a previous time. So it's all about disaster recovery. And because you've got that confidence now that you can recover from disaster, you can move as quickly as possible. And with Weaveworks, we talk about GitOps because we store the configuration management in Git, and we use Kubernetes native abilities. So it's basically configuration management in a Kubernetes native way.
So GitOps is one of the many offerings that Weaveworks has. So can you talk about your other components and how they all work together to make the life of your user or customer easier.
Right, absolutely. And ultimately we see the world split into kind of two areas. One area is for operators and cluster operators, and they need to be able to deploy clusters and operate clusters. And one area is for applications and SRE teams, and they need to operate those applications, monitor them, and look after them in production. So the Kubernetes layer, we do GitOps, and that's designed for operators, and that's our Kubernetes distribution. And then for developers and SREs, we do Weave Cloud, which is a set of tooling that helps developers and SREs to deploy their applications. It gives you great observability tooling, and it does monitoring as Prometheus. And we deliver that as a SaaS service. So whether you're a development team and you just want to develop your applications, run them in your Kubernetes infrastructure as easily as possible, and that we do with Weave Cloud, whether you're on EKS or whether you're on GCP or you're on premise, whatever. And then with our infrastructure product, that's all about GitOps for Kubernetes and deploying Kubernetes and monitoring and managing Kubernetes in production. So two products which together give you a complete stack. Obviously, our developer tooling can work with any Kubernetes that you're operating. So it doesn't matter whether it's our Kubernetes or if you're running Rancher or if you're running GCP or AWS or EKS. Any Kubernetes that you're running, you can use our developer tooling with. So in that sense, it's kind of works with any Kubernetes native deployment.
Right. Like GitOps is a good example of solving a problem. What is the biggest problem or challenge that you see right now here that you're like, hey, the Kubernetes community still needs to solve the problem, and Weaveworks may jump in and say, hey, this is what.
Yeah, so for us, I think it's more of a higher level problem that we're trying to solve rather than a specific technology or component. We talk to lots of quite advanced Kubernetes users who've got Kubernetes up and running, they're operating it in production, and their biggest complaint is that it takes too much time and effort. And we all like playing with technology. That's why we come to these conferences. There's lots of interesting things. But at a higher level business strategy perspective, most users want to be able to get on with their applications, deploy into Kubernetes, and operate their Kubernetes very easily. So that's why we got into GitOps. And for us, the higher level problem that we're trying to solve is basically the operating model for Kubernetes. If you think back to an earlier time, say Linux, everyone understands how to deploy, monitor, manage, and look after Linux distributions. But in the Kubernetes world, those are not standardized, and people do things with their own hand-built tooling. Everyone's building their own house in their own way. And what we're trying to do is provide a standardized workflow for how to deploy Kubernetes, how to configure it, how to look after it, how to monitor it, how to manage it, how to update it. All of those using a standard set of workflows that work with any Kubernetes and any set of applications.
You may choose not to answer this question, but I ask everybody, and you may. So, okay, we are here at a tech conference. We had a kind of heavy dose of hardcore technology. I want to lighten the mood a bit.
Sure.
If you get time free from the work, what do you do in the free time? What are your hobbies?
Right. I'm really into mountaineering. That's actually my main hobby. So I spend a lot of time in the Alps. I like climbing and mountaineering. So I spend a lot of time in France. So that's the main thing. We've got a bank holiday, a public holiday next week. So the main thing I'll be doing is going back from here to the Alps and spending a couple of days mountaineering.
How much do you travel for Weaveworks?
Yeah, quite a lot. I spend a lot of time on planes and trains. I generally try and take my climbing shoes with me and hope that if there's a spare weekend, there's somewhere good to climb in the area that I'm at.
Do you also make use of you are like escalators and just run up and down?
Right. That's not. I do need that workout, but it's not quite the same for sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve, for talking to me today, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you.